Here it says that these things are called birth pangs. The King James Version calls it the beginning of sorrows. It's the word for birth pangs. You know, a woman in birth, you know what that is, right? You get contractions. And as you get closer to the time of that delivery, the contractions get harder, right? And then just before, it's really intense contractions, right? It's a great analogy of this beginning of this time of these sorrows. On this chart, I've basically listed these things that Jesus said are going to happen from the time that he left until the time of the end. 10 years ago, or actually 12 years ago now, we did this class. I think that one we called His Story, God's Purpose of the Ages. It's kind of similar class. And we had this session. I'd like to read to you what I wrote 12 years ago about these sorrows. All of the events listed on this chart we just read in these chapters. These are the beginning of sorrows. Sometimes we don't look at the overall scope as what has transpired. We often live in the little time and space that we belong, and we miss the big picture. These sorrows have been going on since the day of Pentecost. Starting with the first century church and then on into early church history, there has been great persecution of Christians. Still today in certain countries, individuals who promote Christianity are persecuted. In the last 1,000 years, there have been incredible sorrows. In the Crusades between 1000 and 1200 AD, hundreds, thousands of Jews, Muslims, and Christians were killed. In the 14th century, during the Black Plague, over 25 million Europeans died. The cholera epidemic in Russia claimed the lives of over 2 million. In the infamous famines in Ireland and Sichuan, China, over 4.5 million people died. In the 19th century, in China, a false prophet rose up claiming to be the Son of God and the brother of Jesus Christ. He started a movement called Taiping, and a 15-year struggle ensued. By the end of this struggle, there were millions of casualties. In just the last century, great sorrows have occurred. The great Tokyo and San Francisco earthquakes killed over 150,000 people. War in the last century has enormous casualties. Over 14 million people died in World War I. 40 million people died in World War II, and another 7 million died in the Korea and Vietnam War, not to mention the number of people that died in the Russian Revolution and the communist takeover of China. Through systematic genocide in Armenia, Cambodia, and Bosnia, over 1 million people were killed. Another 6 million were killed in the Holocaust during World War II. Even as recent as 1967, smallpox disease had killed 2 million people. Today, cancer, heart disease, and AIDS kill hundreds of thousands each year. In just the last 20 years, there had been over 25 major earthquakes in different places on the earth that had killed over 150,000 people. I wrote that in 1999. Let's look at what's happened in just the 12 years since I wrote that. On September 11th, 2001, 19 men from Arab nations hijacked airplanes, crashed in the World Trade Center towers in New York City, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. This triggered chaos throughout the world, including 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Estimates vary on the number of deaths caused by these conflicts, but sources indicate that both civilian and combatant deaths are over 100,000 for the war in Iraq, and thousands each year have died for the conflict in Afghanistan, which has now continued for over 10 years. On December 26, 2004, a 9.3 magnitude earthquake in the Indian Ocean triggered a tsunami that killed approximately 230,000 people, making it, in 2004, the deadliest natural disaster in history. On January 12, 2010, in August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck southeast Louisiana, affecting the entire Gulf Coast from Florida to Texas. 1,836 people died, and it caused an estimated $81 billion in damage, making it the costliest natural disaster in U.S. history. On January 12, 2010, an earthquake with a 7.0 magnitude struck the island of Haiti, leaving more than 1 million people homeless. The latest death toll estimate is that more than 300,000 people died from that earthquake and the ensuing aftershocks, a new record of the world's deadliest natural disaster in just 6 years. On March 11, 2011, off the Pacific coast of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake produced a tsunami 33 feet high along Japan's northeastern coast, with an official count of more than 25,000 people confirmed to be dead or missing. This also caused a nuclear meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, causing one of the greatest nuclear power plant disasters in history. The total cost estimates from this disaster are still being calculated. The price tag last known was over $300 billion. In what was called the Great Persecution in history, during the Roman Diocletian, historians estimate that more than 20,000 Christians were killed for their faith between 290 and 313 AD. That's called the Great Persecution. This number is small in comparison to what is happening in the modern world today. According to the World Evangelical Alliance, over 200 million Christians in at least 60 countries are denied fundamental human rights solely based on their faith. China, North Korea, India, and countless Muslim and Arab countries regularly persecute and kill Christians. In our day and time, Christians are still being beheaded. And in some places, they're videotaped for all people to see. Although estimates vary, most sources agree that more than 100,000 Christians are persecuted annually in our day and time. In the Sudan alone, since 1984, it's estimated that more than 1.5 million Christians have been killed by Arab Muslim militia. In a speech last year, the President of the United States gave a speech on Mideast policy. In his speech praising the Arab Spring, the President spoke of having religious tolerance and quoted from the Egyptians chanting in Tahrir Square, "Muslims, Christians, we are one." Last spring, between the months of April and May, a series of tornadoes swept through the southern states, killing more than 500 people, one of the deadliest tornado seasons in history. And just this past week, a new series of tornadoes swept our country, paving a path of death and destruction. At the same time, right now, today in the world continues to writhe in economic troubles, and rhetoric is getting more forceful every day, hinting at another war, yet another war, this time with Iran. Now, I don't know if we're going to go to a war with Iran, but I can guarantee you, because of the words of our Lord, if the Lord tarries, we will be in another war. It is the time of sorrows. We are in the time exactly what Jesus said would happen. We have been and still are in the beginning of sorrows. We are in the last days.